Welcome back to the Dairy Knowledge Exchange. I'm Pat Colley, and I'm excited to share a fresh initiative we're launching in 2025 here at D&D Ingredients. Each month, we'll bring an educational webinar on this platform, spotlighting timely industry topics and featuring one of our valued partner products. Make sure to visit the D&D website regularly to explore these new learning opportunities.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. I'm Sam Mosley with Diamond V, based out of Columbus, Ohio, working as a tech service rep. And so today we're pretty excited to introduce a new product to the Diamond V lineup that's built around helping cows mitigate heat stress. And so as we look at what's going on with heat stress, certainly most of you are aware of the impacts it has on our cows. But if we look at some EPA data, certainly the frequency of heat waves, the duration of heat waves, and the heat wave seasons are all increasing. And so that's putting additional stress on our cows. And so typically our cows are going to start to experience heat stress somewhere around that 68 THI. And so if you look at what percentage of time cows are in heat stress, so this is a graph of a whole year's worth of data in these individual plots. And so if we draw a line here at 68 ambient air temperature, our cows are generally in that heat stress situation about 30% of the time. And so this can actually be a big impact on our production, on reproduction, and it hits in waves and it just builds throughout the summer. And so what does that do to our cows? Certainly in the lactating group, we see reductions in dry matter intake, reductions in milk production, immune function is decreased, and fertility certainly drops during that period of time. We also see an increase in early transition disorders, mastitis, metritis, retained placentas, etc. On our dry cows, they're certainly not immune. We see a reduction in dry matter intake before calving. Certainly immune function is decreased as well. And we see a huge impact on subsequent milk production in these cows. Additionally, we see an increase, as in the milking cows, an increase in early lactation diseases, again, mastitis, respiratory disease, as well as those transition disorders. It not only affects the cow herself, though, it's certainly impacting the calf in utero as well. And there's been a significant amount of research looking at the calves born to dams who are experiencing heat stress. And so what we observe here is that there's reductions in body weights. Average daily gain is affected negatively. We see grain intake reduced. Immune function is down, but really we're affecting this animal across her entire life, seeing a reduction in productive life, as well as a reduction in future milk production. There's also some work that's being done now looking at not only the calf in utero, but her subsequent calf as well. And it's potential that we're affecting 3 generations of milking animals when these dry cows are impacted significantly by heat stress. So how do cows dissipate heat? They've got a couple of mechanisms. There's conduction through touching, radiation, just giving off heat. But the primary mechanisms that the cow has for getting rid of internal heat is through panting and sweating. And so these are both forms of evaporative cooling. But during this time, we're also blowing off a lot of water. And so they're apt to dehydration during this period of time. And so that's certainly something that's going to impact our cows. From a financial standpoint, some calculations have been done looking at what it costs the U.S. dairy industry, and it's upwards of $1.5 billion. And so we know that it's certainly impacting our individual dairies to a great extent, but it's really seeing substantial drops in production, reproductive performance, and increasing morbidity and mortality. So we've got several tools we can look at to mitigate heat stress. Certainly, physical mitigation and management practices are going to always be our keys and our primary go-tos when we look at managing heat stress. From a physical standpoint, including shades and dry lots or pastures, certainly adding fans or sprinklers and soakers, particularly at targeting our high lactating cows and our holding pens, which is most likely our most hostile environment on the dairy. From a management standpoint, certainly providing clean, fresh drinking water, perhaps considering changing feeding times, moving that starting feeding time to later in the afternoon or in the evening so that we've got fresh feed when cows want to eat more, and certainly making sure that we're doing a good job of keeping feed pushed up so that we can really have feed available when cows want to eat. We can also do some things nutritionally. There's some electrolytes that can help replenish the electrolytes lost through dehydration. We often see increases in potassium in diets. Again, potassium is given off as cows are sweating. We change the energy density, we increase the energy density because they are eating less. We want to make sure they're getting the same caloric intake. But we've got some additives now on the market that we can look at. And the one I want to share with you today is Ice Plus from Diamond V. And so we'll jump into what that looks like. And so Diamond V works on three different levels. We're hydrating the cow at the cellular level. We're helping that cow reduce her internal body temperature, and we're protecting cells from damage, from free radicals and things that may come from increased stress and increased metabolic rates. So, as I mentioned, this product has three components. It has an osmolyte, a vasodilator, and an antioxidant. And each of these works in a different mechanism. So, an osmolyte helps to regulate protein function within the cell and also helps cells stay hydrated. The vasodilator opens up blood vessels to get increased blood flow out to the skin, and this aids in evaporative cooling. And then the antioxidant package that's part of this just helps us maintain cellular integrity and prevent cellular damage due to heat stress. And so it's got two modes of actions. So the primary mode of action is hydrating the cell. The osmolyte that is in this product helps to maintain proper water balance within the cell. It works differently than an electrolyte. So an osmolyte is a small molecular molecule that once absorbed helps the cell manage and maintain hydration. So one of the advantages it has over an electrolyte is that it particularly in our dry cow rations, when we're looking to balance decad, we don't have to change anion balances when this product is fed. However, it does take some time to build up within the cell, and so typically we want to make sure we're starting this product early, prior to heat stress. And so our target date is typically when evening or night temperatures are staying above 60 degrees consistently. From the cooling, the other mechanism is cooling and protecting. And so this is helping the cow facilitate heat displacement through increased evaporative cooling, and then protecting the cell from oxidative damage from heat stress. And so this allows the cow to reduce her core body temperature and helps maintain a lower body temperature through the heat of the day. So as we look at how heat abatement solutions work throughout the year, during the early season, late spring into the early summer, the barn itself is just a cooler place, right? We see nighttime temperatures dropping down. Cows have time to get relief, but it's continuing to build as it increases. During the summer, every bout of heat stress that the cow experiences adds up, right? And so the cow is slower to recover from those losses each time she experiences a heat stress event. And by the late summer or early fall, cows are just worn out because they've experienced so much heat stress. It becomes very difficult for them to recuperate from these bouts. And so with Ice Plus, it's a product that is certainly, it's not necessarily new to the market. It's new to Diamond B. It's actually been in the market for about 2 decades. And what I'd like to do is share with you some of the field trials that we've observed, and look at some data that supports this. So kind of a summary from what we're seeing from milk trials, things we've looked at are certainly milk yield, reproduction, and body temperature. On the milk yield side, we see that we're seeing an improvement in milk yield through these summer months. This is often difficult to measure without a control group within the herd, because we don't know what normal milk loss would have been. But what we're doing is conserving more milk production through heat stress situations. From a reproductive standpoint, we're seeing improvements in egg quality and oocyte quality, as well, and this results in improved conception rates. And then from a body temperature standpoint, we're seeing reduced peak body temperatures, and we're maintaining temperatures below critical thresholds longer. So from a milk production standpoint, I'd like to highlight two trials. One's out of Indiana, the other's out of Mexico. The Indiana trial is in a modern cross-ventilated barn with good cow cooling. The Mexico trial is a dry lot facility with shades only and no external heat abatement solutions. In the Indiana trial, we observed about a 2-pound increase in milk yield over controls. And then in the Mexico trial, where they're actually seeing more heat stress, this number jumps up to about a 5-pound difference in observed milk yield. And so what I want to do is jump a little deeper into some of the Indiana results and maybe think about how Ice Plus might help cows, particularly as we get later into the summer. So this trial started on July 2nd. So our pre-trial data points, in the control, we were averaging about 98.5 pounds of milk. The Ice Plus cows were averaging 97 pounds of milk. If we put this on a 150-day standardized milk yield, they're both pretty similar right there at about 100 pounds. Dry matter intake was also similar during this period. As we jump into the trial phase between essentially the 1st of July through the end of August, what we're seeing is that cows on Ice Plus had about a 3-pound increase, 2.5 to 3-pound increase in raw milk yield. On a standardized basis, this is about 3 pounds. And they're doing this through maintaining higher intake levels. So we see about a pound higher dry matter intake consumption. What's interesting with this trial is they actually followed it out 2 weeks following the stop of treatment. And so as we look at controls on a milk yield basis, they're at about 105.5 pounds. The Ice Plus cows are still maintaining that advantage of about 2.5 pounds, about 2 pounds. On a standardized 150-day milk yield, this is about a 5-pound difference. But what's really interesting here to me is that we're seeing this is really being driven through dry matter intake. We're seeing about a 3-pound increase in dry matter intake. And so what this is suggesting is that because we're able to manage heat stress through these different waves of heat stress, as we get into later summer, it appears that cows are recovering quicker and producing closer to fuller potential post heat stress events. So from a reproductive standpoint, we've got a couple of trials here that I'd like to highlight. First, over here on the right-hand side, we were looking at what's going on from an embryo and egg quality. These two trials are both out of Brazil. These cows are housed in naturally ventilated barns with fans, but no water. When we do ovum pickup, we see that the cows on Ice Plus have higher viability in the oocytes. And when they look at embryo quality on animals that have been superovulated, the control group has a much higher percentage of cows that are classified or graded as number 4s or degenerate, or dying embryos, where that group of cows consuming Ice Plus have a much higher percentage of cows or embryos that are graded number ones or excellent quality embryos. And so as we think about this, this should be translating into improved conception rates and improved preg rates as we get into our lactating herd. And then over here on the left is showing just that. And so this is a herd out of Texas under some pretty substantial heat stress. It's also a dry lot dairy with shades only. And so this is looking at first service conception rates in multi-parous cows. And what we observe is the control cows have a very low first service conception rate, and we're increasing that by about 8 percentage points when they're fed Ice Plus. And so we see a substantial increase in the conception first service conception rate of cows that are on Ice Plus. And how is this happen, or what's a potential mechanism for what's going on? This is actually looking at core body temperature or vaginal temperature taken through thermocrons placed on CEDARs. And this is looking at body temperature averages over about 5 days through a substantial heat stress situation. And so on average, we're maintaining a core body temperature a half a degree lower than the controls. And so when we start talking about a half a degree, it doesn't sound like much, but really the body temperature is a pretty tightly regulated function. And so a half a degree change can be pretty substantial. Typically, when we're talking about the impact of heat stress, temperatures over 102.5 are what we consider to be substantially heat stressed and having a severe negative impact, particularly on reproduction. As we dig into this a little deeper, this is the raw data out of this particular trial, looking over this 5-day heat stress event. And so as we look at overall THI, regardless of whether it's in the sun or shade, we're at about 79, 78 THI. If we look at average vaginal temperatures, we see about that half degree decrease. If we look at max temperatures, that half a degree holds true. What I really want to draw your attention to is over here on the right-hand side, is we're looking at time under heat stress conditions, or time over that 102.5. And so what we observed here is this heat stress event went out longer and longer. We were able to maintain that body temperature lower. So these cows spent less time above that 102.5. So 6% more time on average. They were in less heat stress, or under that threshold of 102.5. And so just kind of wrap it up, from a summary standpoint, really this is about protecting performance from heat stress. And so we're seeing improved response and recovery after a heat stress event. Really looking to protect the investments that we've made in cows, particularly during heat stress times. It's been proven and it's well supported. It's backed by over 20 years of experience and trials within the field. And it's safe for all classes of dairy cows, including our close-up cows, where it can be sometimes hard to get products into those rations. From a feeding recommendation standpoint, for growing heifers, breeding age heifers would be targeting about 12 grams per day. Lactating cows would be an 18 gram per day. If we've got jerseys, we could probably back that off. This is a body weight based feeding rate. And so jerseys with a lower body weight can certainly have a slightly lower feeding rate. Dry cows would be that similar 18 or 14, depending on breed. And with beef cows, we're down in that 14 grams per day. When do you start? Certainly looking at current and historic weather patterns, we'd be targeting about 2 weeks before we see nighttime, or 2 weeks prior to severe heat events. Ideally, we'd be starting when that nighttime temperature is above 60 degrees consistently. And so this is just saying that cows are not able to cool themselves and get relief through those higher nighttime temperatures. For those of you who might be a current Diamond V customers feeding XPC or Nutritech, these two products actually work in very different mechanisms to Ice Plus. XPC and Nutritech are really focused on how we impact rumen performance and the rumen microbiome. Nutritech certainly has an advantage there in that it impacts enhances the immunity, and as these cows are responding better to stress. Whereas Ice Plus is really focused on hydration and managing that core temperature. And so we know that when cows are in heat stress, they're consuming less feed, they're more apt to be under acidic type situations. So feeding a product like XPC or Nutritech is certainly still beneficial so that we can maintain good rumen function. But adding Ice Plus to that package is certainly going to be a benefit as well, as we have the need to improve the hydration of cells and to reduce that core body temperature. So with that, I'll wrap it up. I certainly thank you for your time. Below is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to myself or your other Diamond V or my other Diamond V teammates that you're currently working with. And certainly thank you for your time today.
Thanks for tuning in to the Dairy Knowledge Exchange. Don't forget to check our product page for featured products and promotions throughout the year. Connect with us on LinkedIn or share your thoughts and topic suggestions directly with me at pat@ddingredient.com. We look forward to hearing from you.